see. We there? All right. Well, good morning, everyone. We are thrilled to have you all here. We have a fantastic guest today, so I'm going to let her speak here in just a minute. Because this is a half hour, I'm going to do a very quick intro to SCORE Utah. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. For those of you who are on the line, if you are here, you probably are familiar with SCORE because you came to us through SCORE. But just a note to remind you that we are a 100% volunteer organization. We provide free mentoring to small businesses. We provide local webinars and workshops just like this one to help you do better and learn more in your work. We do record all these, so they are also on demand if you ever wanted to go back in and see some of the topics that were discussed in the past, or go back and review the topics that you have attended. And then we have a vast library of online resources so that individuals can go out there and find resources, guides, templates, checklists, etc. for your business. If you have an interest in working with SCORE Utah, here's the information we have. We cover all of Utah, all small employers in Utah. We have about 35 or so volunteers now, and you can scan that QR code and reach out and either request to be a mentor or request services as a mentee. So we'd love to hear from you. But without further ado, I wanted to just quickly introduce Jill Schroyer. She is our presenter today, and she's going to be talking about becoming a marvelous manager, which I know everyone wants to do. You can put your questions into the chat, and you can either respond to them directly, or our presenter or I'll respond to them at the end, or Jill can respond to them at the end, or during the course. So with that, I will let Jill go ahead and share her screen and begin. So welcome, Jill.
Thank you so much. All right, let's see if I can do this. I'm in HR for a reason and not tech. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay, we've got some thumbs up. Awesome. Well, thanks, Janine, for the intro. Hi, everyone. I'm Jill Schroyer, and I'm CEO at Expedition HR. And I'm really excited to dive in and do this super quick training today. I'm going to fit it into this 30-minute spot we have. There's a lot to cover. I want to have a little bit of fun as well. So let me go dive right in. So over this 5-week series, 30 minutes a week of Be a Marvelous Manager, we're going to be learning. If you see me looking around, I'm just looking at my other screen. I'm trying to figure out a way to see. Okay. Okay, perfect. Can everyone still see it? Are we still good? Okay. Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, perfect. I just couldn't see it on my main screen. Okay, so in this 5-week series, you're going to learn basically 2 things. They're big things: traits of a marvelous manager, and I want to teach you 5 things that all marvelous managers do. So let's go right in. But first, if I could ask 2 things of you today, if you could be open to learning one thing, keep an open mind, and also take one thing and implement it within the next 2 weeks. Or if you've got a team of managers, teach it to them and ask them to implement it. So that's all I ask, because really, if you take 1 or 2 things out of this training, we're going to call that a huge win. Okay, so if you're willing, you can pop it in the chat or just maybe think about it. Call to mind a manager you've had in your past who you admired. Maybe it will bring a smile to your face. Why do they stand out in your mind as a good manager? So either on a piece of note paper or just in your head, think of a few reasons or traits they exhibited. If you're willing to throw them in the chat, I'd love to see kind of what people come up with, and maybe some examples of how they exhibited those traits. Again, no pressure here, but if anyone is willing to put anything in the chat, we can kind of get a little dialogue going about this. And as we're kind of seeing if anyone wants to name a trait or 2, I can share a little bit here. I actually have a picture of my best boss. His name was Henry, and I will talk about him all day long. He was the best boss I've ever had. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is just kind of give you an idea, learning a little bit about me. I liked Henry because he was straightforward. He was honest. He was a straight shooter. He was very funny. And I appreciate a little bit of humor. We're at work all day. You know what he did too? He empowered me. The second he was one of my first HR managers in my first HR job. And he came in, he's like, what do you need? What do you need for training? Go do it. And he just empowered me to take control. Like I mentioned down the bottom, he was direct, always kind. And again, feel free to share anything in the chat. He was always kind when he disagreed or didn't understand something. And what I liked is he over communicated. He always checked back in, not micromanaged. He hired me to do a job and ensured I had the tools to be successful. I see in the chat, Keith says one boss was very fair and professional. Another boss always treated us like adults. I love that. Keith, I love the word fair. That's a big word. And like being truly fair is a really great trait of a manager. It means they're thoughtful, they're being aware of how they're treating everyone. Okay, now the not so fun part. Maybe call to mind a manager you had in your past who you did not admire. See the thumbs down. Feel free to throw anything in the chat. Why do they stand out in your mind as a not so awesome manager? And maybe and again, this is all really good kind of thought work too, even if you don't put it in the chat. Like what reasons or traits did they exhibit that formed this opinion? And maybe some examples if you're willing to share. I'm just going to call this one, ooh, big mouth. Rami says that's definitely something that we have to watch out for. Sandy was not the name. And of course, I'm not going to put a picture of the worst boss I had. I did not like how this person, the biggest thing, they talked about others negatively. And that I don't like that in general. I say if we're going to say something about someone, let's say it like they're in the room. It should be straightforward, direct, and not hurtful. This manager also shared a lot of personal issues, made me feel really uncomfortable, and I wasn't quite sure what to say. They vented about being so busy, and they were harsh and unpredictable. Like one day, I thought they were the nicest person. The next day, you could tell they just wanted to like take someone down with them. They were just upset, and that was a very unpredictable personality. So thanks for sharing there in the chat. So what I hope rose up as, Keith also said, didn't hear what I had to say when we were introduced to her. I already knew it was trouble. Wow. That's rough. When the first interaction with someone, you can tell they're not truly seeing you. So what usually rises up when I do this training is, what kind of boss comes through or what kind of traits come through for the best boss? Things like they're a good listener, they're trustworthy. What a big, big word for, a great manager, like trustworthy. That's an awesome thing to say about a great manager. They were interested in our success. They gave frequent, fair, notice Keith had mentioned the word fair, and helpful feedback. They ask before they tell. These are things that really rose up. And the reason I'm starting with this is just to kind of get us thinking, like, what makes a good boss? What makes a bad boss? And what's the kind of boss or manager we want to be, or we want the managers in our workplace to be? So as I kick off the first trait of a great manager, I want to share this quote from Maya Angelou. It's my favorite quote of all time. Those that have trained with me will see this come up. I've learned that people will forget what you said. They will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I'll tell you, Henry, the best boss I've ever had. I smile, I laugh when I think about him. He was a role model in my life. He was just amazing person in my life. And I think of Sandy, and I remember the way she kind of made me feel, kind of insecure about how she was going to react. So I would want to be a manager that people remember like Henry for me. So today we're going to talk about one of the 5 things that marvelous managers do well. The first one is they communicate well. In successive weeks, we're going to talk about how they value building relationships. They provide frequent and effective feedback. They actively work on their emotional intelligence skills. And then the last section, we're going to talk about how they're time management role models. So many things about managers, but I really think these 5 things are going to elevate anyone as a manager. So let's dive in the last 20 minutes we've got today. So great managers communicate well. Simple, right? We all talk, we all communicate. Not so quick, right? There's so much that goes into communication. Would anyone like to try and fill in the blank? The single biggest problem in communication is what? Does anyone want to take a stab? What's the problem? Well, I'm going to tell you that it has taken place. We often think we're communicating. Yeah, we said that. We said that once or twice. Why aren't they getting it? So that is one of my favorite quotes. The single biggest problem of that communication, that it has taken place. So what does it really mean to communicate well as a manager? First of all, zip it. Listen more. Don't just listen. Truly hear what the other person is saying, because not everyone is looking for a quick fix, advice, or an answer. Sometimes people just want to be heard. And so when you're a good communicator, sometimes it's not a matter of what you're saying, it's that you're a really good listener and that you're hearing them. So give up for being interesting, for being interested. I don't know where I heard this, but I love it. So really what this means is try not to be the one that's sharing everything. Ask questions, make even sounds when someone's talking, like, interesting. Okay, got it. Okay, let me make sure I'm understanding correctly. You feel like, am I understanding that correctly? Okay, thanks for sharing your concerns. Gosh, what do you think next steps should be? Let's chat through this. What ideas do you have? So instead of being that, interesting person where you have all the solutions, hey, none of us have all the answers. So let's not pretend we do, but also we build trust. So a lot of these traits I'm going to share, they're all kind of overlapped as well. When you're just giving up being interesting, meaning sharing all the things for just listening, responding, and you see some quotes I put in red here, like I just mentioned, when someone's talking, really look at them. Say things like, I see. Okay, I think I've got what you're saying. Let me make sure I'm understanding. Is this what you're saying? So stop having your ideas always wanting to be shared and listen more to theirs. I also believe at Expedition HR, my company, there's communication pillars, and there's 3 of them. I work off these 3 pillars in everything I do. It's simple, straightforward, and human-centered. And that is how I believe the best communication takes place. So the first one is simple. I'll tell a really quick story. I was on a plane coming back from the East Coast this summer, and it was pretty bumpy and there was some weather, and we were just about ready to touch down and we were really rickety. And I thought, I fly a lot and I like to fly. I'm not nervous about it. And I thought, I'm nervous right now, especially the recent incidents that happened. It's scary. If that had happened before this trip, I would have been a lot more nervous. But we're about to land, and right at almost at the runway, we're really coming in like this. We take off and we're almost vertical, and everyone is looking at each other like, what just happened? None of us know what's happening. We're all confused. And eventually a pilot comes on and says, all right, that wasn't a safe landing. We're going to try it again. Try it again? I was like, try it again? Well, let's hope it works. So when I say simple, land the plane, don't keep circling the runway. Just say what you want to say in as few words as possible. Like they say in marketing, you confuse them, you lose them. Same thing in communication. If you're too verbose, no one's going to know what you came there to share. So more words does not equal better communication. Less said, best said. So also, I call this a straightforward filter, which is the second pillar of communication that I like to talk about. Does what you plan to say pass through all these filters? Is it direct? Is it professional? And is it kind? By being direct, I mean, is it with as few words as possible? Are you not dancing around the thing that needs to be said, whether it be a tough conversation or just respecting someone's time? Is it professional, meaning not really, it doesn't have to be all buttoned up and stuffy. It just needs to be respectful and kind. Even if we're asking someone to do something for us or to share feedback, it can still be direct, professional, and kind. And so I say, when you're about to say something, to be a great communicator, try dropping it through this filter. And oftentimes you might say, oh, that didn't sound super professional. It sounded not quite how I wanted it to come out. Let me go rework what I want to say. Or gosh, that feels harsh the way I'm going to plan to say this. Let me rework it. It doesn't pass the kind filter. And let's not forget to be human-centered. This is probably my favorite pillar of the 3 communication pillars. We want to remember empathy. You don't even have to like the person who you show empathy to. All you need to do is stop for a minute and say, what would it be like to be in their shoes? And to be a great communicator, we don't instantly just take one side and block out any thinking about what it could be like for them. For instance, if someone shares something hard with you, I don't know anyone that would really say this. We wouldn't want to say, okay, yeah, move on, or at work, you just have to move on. You could show empathy by just saying, gosh, that sounds hard. And then pause and just sit with it for a second, and you can still communicate what you need to after. You just formed a really nice trust bond with the person when you express a little empathy towards what they're saying. Another way to be human-centered is to talk with them and not at them. A way to do this is ask questions. Like I mentioned, give up for being interesting. Give up being interesting to be interested. Hey, I've got a question. Or, oh, tell me more about this. Instead of, I know what we should do. We should start with this. And the way you did it was wrong. This is how we should do it. That's not talking with them. Great communicators, great managers, marvelous managers talk with their teams. Now, this doesn't mean you have to get feedback and input from everybody on everything as a manager. No, that's not what it's saying. It's just making sure that you're not just always closing down the option to have dialogue with someone instead of always pushing your agenda. I like to talk about connection before content. Awesome managers, marvelous managers that communicate well, believe in connection before content, whether it's showing a little empathy, like, gosh, yeah, that traffic, that construction area is really rough. I know it's hard. Thanks for coming in, and maybe we can talk about ways to make sure we can get through the construction and be at work by this time. Connect with them before just delivering your content. There's another phrase I've heard is connection before correction. Like if you've got to share feedback, just kind of ask them, hey, how's your morning going? I get some pushback sometimes on this, and some say, oh, I don't want to ask, Joe about how his morning's going because I get a 3-minute or 5-minute response. And I challenge you to just try it. Try and connect first. And it's okay to say, okay, we're going to now move over into talking about these work items. It's okay to kind of steer the conversation. If you try and connect, you're just going to be known as a better communicator. You're going to build trust. So having great communication brings trust with it. I mentioned about asking questions. What do you think? What ideas do you have? And not just asking like to give lip service. You might find out something new if you stop and ask and kind of put your ideas here and just say, hey, do you have anything to add? I'd love to know your thoughts. Being human-centered is also being distraction-free. We live in such a world of distractions. Our phone, not just our phone buzzers, the lights on our phone. If you've got it sitting in front of you, like many of you have your phone, and even if you have your buzzers off, if it lights up, it's really hard not to look at it. Am I right? Being honest about that. Let's be distraction free when we're communicating with someone on our team and being truly present. Like I mentioned, not just listening, but really hearing them, being fully there. And, we all have 20 things going on at any given time. And I promise you, if you're fully present in a meeting with someone, it's going to benefit all sides. It's just going to be a win-win, and it's going to be well worth you setting aside the time. One of my favorite things about communicating in a human-centered way is repeat it for clarity. Do you know that sometimes people need up to like 13 touch points to make something click? They say in sales, usually a minimum of 7 touch points, up to sometimes 13, even 14, until someone makes a sale even. So when I talk about being human-centered and repeating yourself, that's the data from sales to kind of get through to someone and have them understand what you're selling can benefit them. It's just like being human-centered in communication. Don't say it once and just expect that they're going to remember it all, because that's frankly unfair. And human-centered is we've all got a lot going on, like remind, which is what I want to talk about here in just a minute, but I've got a pop quiz. Is anyone willing to put in the chat the answer to this question? So what's the best way to communicate well? Should I A, under communicate? Should I B, over communicate? Or C, just communicate the perfect amount? Is anyone willing to wager a guess in the chat? I'm going to give it a minute here to see if anyone's willing to put their answer in. What's the best way? Don't be shy. Is it A? Okay, perfect amount. All right, we've got a guess for the perfect amount. Okay, we've got Courtney saying B, over communicate. Anyone else want to wager a guess? So I'll walk through. So the first one, under communicate. Nobody would likely put A. We don't want to under communicate, just it's not enough. B, over communicating, or C, communicating the perfect amount. I'm going to jump to C for a minute. So perfect does not exist. From a recovering perfectionist, it doesn't exist. So C isn't even an option. So under communicating isn't good. The perfect amount is a myth. It doesn't exist. Our only option is to over communicate. So let's chat a little in these last few minutes about what that really means, because I think this is one of the key things about communication. So over communicating versus micromanaging, what's the difference? Is there a difference? If anyone wants to pop anything in the chat, feel free. So this is the take I have on it. Over communicating is maybe asking between check-in meetings, hey, Jane, is there anything I can do to support you this week? Maybe you ask, hey, would you mind sharing a high-level update on what you're working on at our weekly check-ins? Or asking, do you have what you need to meet the deliverables for the project coming due next week? Remember, they're questions. Henry used to do this. And to me, that is checking in, that is caring, that is not saying, I want to see all your emails before they're sent, or asking for a detailed update every day or multiple times a day. Let me know first thing each day what you're working on, and a quick update at the end of the day on what you got accomplished. That feels micromanaging to me. And again, there's opinions on this. I still believe over communicating is you can ask for deliverables in a respectful way and a reasonable way. Micromanaging would be requiring a team to do things a certain way every time and not letting them have the freedom to complete their tasks in their own way. So as long as they meet the same goal or get to the same result, let them do it their way. So we don't want, when we're communicating, over communicating versus micromanaging is a huge piece of communicating as a manager. I get asked a lot, this person needs more. So I say it sounds like a case of needing more management or some intentional over communicating. Micromanaging is nitpicky. So there's a fine line. I would be remiss if I didn't say there is a fine line between over communicating versus micromanaging. But again, these type of phrasing for over communicating versus micromanaging is what I believe sets it apart in our communication. We're managers, right? We have to hold our teams to expectations. It's okay to hold your team to expectations and be kind and have good rapport. It all goes hand in hand. So, in summary, I want to say you can be caring, you can be empathetic, you can adhere to your organization's values, and you can hold your employees to work expectations. So, through your communications, you want to be caring, empathetic, and adhering to values in the way you speak, in the way you act. And at the same time, you can also be a great communicator and hold your employees to work expectations as I outlined a little bit in over communicating versus micromanaging. So that's what I have on this quick bit. I didn't want to try and squeeze too much in, but those are some kind of quick hits when it comes to communication. So I'd love to see you again next week, right? Same time on Tuesday. We're going to talk about how marvelous managers are always building relationships and trust. And this is one of my very favorite things next to time management to talk about. And so I hope to see you there. Before I go, I put together a few videos. If anyone likes the idea of saying, "Ooh, I'd like to share some information with my team," what I did was I put together 5 videos. One is on having tough conversations, one is emotional intelligence, one is phrasing in tough conversations, one is how to stay out of hot water as a manager, and I'm drawing a blank on the 5th one, but there's 5 quick videos and they're all under 5 minutes. They're yours. If you want to grab them, you can download them and use them with your team however you want. I just wanted to share a little resource that you'll see they go along with each module that we'll teach as well. But if you're interested, you can go ahead and grab that. And yeah, I'm here for any questions and if you're willing to share a takeaway, one thing that you said, I like that, I want to take that and try that. If that's all I have. Screeching in a couple minutes early.
All right. Any questions for Jill? Anybody have any questions? We have a minute or two here at the end. Put it in the Q&A, or you're welcome to, or the chat, or you're welcome to come off mute. All right. Not seeing anything. I do want to encourage everyone to attend the rest of this series. Again, this is a 5-part series, so the remaining 4 half-hour bites of information from Jill are going to be over the next every Tuesday for the next 4 weeks. So please mark it on your calendar, and we'd love to see you continue to go through this series. Not seeing any questions or comments in the chat or the Q&A. Is Ara Dorsey? Thank you so much for that nice note. We will let everyone go. Thank you so much. We'll see you back here in a week.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.